This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Pearse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamel.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Pearse, here as always with your co-host, Bill Hamel. Doing something a little different this morning. We're discussing identity shifts and how that affects you as a real estate investor and your real estate investing portfolio as a whole. Bill, when did you start thinking about identity shifts as a real estate professional?
I'm just pondering, Steve, and staring at the wall now because I started off just buying a two-family home years ago, and the goal was to buy a two-family home once a year for 10 years, and then I'm like a millionaire after 10 years, but things don't happen that way. And once I started building up that small portfolio, very slowly but surely, I just turned into a property manager. And I don't want to say I just turned into a property manager. That is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to build a portfolio and do everything, including the property management. I didn't know any better. Looking back, trying to do everything is really going to create a slog, so to speak, and limit growth. But I got to a point after building 150, 250 units. I was a property manager looking to provide the best possible service to our residents as we possibly could. And I was trying to perfect an imperfectible business. And to answer your question, it really occurred to me over the last 2 or 3 years that I had to get out of property management for a variety of reasons, but that identity shift was clearly spelled out to me about 2 months ago.
Really? I would have guessed 2-3 years ago.
The identity shift theory, not so specifically. 2 or 3 years ago, it was just organically one night in the Center Square neighborhood of Albany after I had some trials and tribulations in the business, where I had some staffing issues, and I had staffing issues over the years. We all do. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You just fall down and you get back up and you continue on running your business. But after 27 years doing what I was doing in the property management business, one night I hit my breaking point. I was done. I wasn't done with real estate. Real estate is my identity, but I was done managing properties. It just hit me like a ton of bricks at 5:00 one weekday night. I was done. I drove home that night, 6:30, pulled into my driveway and texted my partner, who's my brother, and my best friend, Greg, who was my other partner, and said basically that I am done. And that was an interesting couple days or week or months in all reality. I just burned right out of property management and shifted into another phase of my real estate journey. But that identity shift clearly explained to me, which really, really creates clarity that I realize now that was spelled out to me a month ago.
That must have been a really powerful feeling that you had to change what you wanted to do with yourself after 27 years of having this role as a professional. Were you kind of self-aware as a property manager that was your identity, or did you think of yourself as an investor at that time?
Once again, I stare at the wall. I wanted to do everything.
Hmm.
Fortunately, I did evolve after about 15 years of getting out of swinging a hammer, so to speak. You build up enough of a portfolio to hire employees, maintenance technicians, property managers in house. And then I was an investor, but also a property manager. I took great pride in being a property manager along with an investor. But the problem is, and this is what I realized, but it just never happened. I just kept slogging along was focus. We've done a lot of focus stuff, me and you.
Hmm.
And I was so focused on property management, there was a point in my career where just, a thought goes through my mind. I haven't bought a property in a little while. And I'm like, I haven't bought a property because I'm not focusing on finding that next deal. I'm so focused on this property management business. So it
It
goes
goes to
back to,
it goes to your famous line, you get what you focus on.
yeah,
And I think there's a couple big points there. One, your identity is always going to change. That's a never ending dynamic thing that should be changing as you grow as a professional and as a person. And second, it takes getting out of that daily routine and something happening in order for you to identify that and make that change. Like for you, it just happened because you got so fed up with it one day. But being able to listen to podcasts like this and hear people that really do work on self development point something like identity shifts out, making you aware of it, that's how you start the process, right?
absolutely. And looking back now that we're having this conversation, I did go to a Tony Robbins seminar, Business Mastery, which was mind blowing to me. The big takeaway I took from that was becoming an owner of your business. Don't be an operator of your business. That's where I wrote that management system that we have on our website, hamelrealestate.com. If anyone's interested in clicking on that link, you can check out that management system that I built over a 10 or 12 year period. Problem was, I did create a nice team, great people, talented people in my team, but my big failure with that was I would not allow my team to do their job, fail, fall down, learn, get back up, and grow. I wouldn't let them fall down. I kept jumping in and jumping in to the point, looking back, which I've learned recently, is the employees just got to a point where they're like, fuck it. Bill's just going to jump in, do what he does, and then they just don't get inspired anymore because I'm not allowing them to grow, and they're just clocking in every day. So I was not able to get out of those operations, and that led me to that evening where I just burned out.
Management is not an easy role. It definitely takes a lot of growth to be able to manage other people correctly. Now you're focusing a lot on capital raising, correct? How is that another identity shift?
Yeah, that's it's all about focus and time. If I'm going to be focusing on operations, it takes away my focus time on raising money or finding that next deal. And that's hugely important. And like I mentioned 2 or 3 months ago, where it was clearly pointed out to me by my mastermind coach on that identity shift. And I knew this, but I don't know. For me, he had to spell it out in front of 10 other people, break it down, break me down, and just show so clearly that, Bill, yeah, you're great at operations, but let's talk about how much operations is going to pay you by the hour compared to the success that you've had with so many great deals over 30 years, and we'll figure out, based on the equity and the money you've made selling those properties, what you got paid by the hour. Now we're comparing what you get paid by the hour being a hands-on operations guy compared to what you get paid by the hour by raising money and finding great deals. At that point, it's like so stark. And then you just drive to the point where you just feel stupid.
Yeah. Thinking about that hourly rate is a really important exercise. I find myself picking up garbage at my properties all the time, thinking, what am I doing right now? And for anyone listening that wants to have that exercise, writing down what you want to do and what you think you're good at. And then if you take the time to write down what you actually do every single day during a work week, it's going to show you what you're doing right now, what you're wasting time on, and where that can be outsourced, where your energy should be shifted to. Something I need to focus a lot more on. It's hard to have the diligence to really fulfill that entire exercise.
Yeah, it goes back to my early days where, we bought that first property. We didn't have any money. We had a couple $1,000s to get in. But at that point, you're like, all right, we got to do everything because we're broke. And then you get into that routine, which turns into the habit. And that's how we did business. We did everything. And that's just the way it was. It morphed into a property management company, and we tried to do as much as we possibly could. But what we didn't focus on properly was exactly what you just said, is what am I good at? What do I love to do? And what are we doing that we can hire out to other people for 15, 20 bucks an hour, where we can focus on those needle moving tasks to grow your business?
So important. The difference between an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And Bill, I think it's a little different for the two of us because you started with real estate. You were still a college student, right?
I was a junior year at SUNY Albany.
Yeah.
And
so
working in a restaurant.
Yeah, so you were still in school. You're still very young. You hadn't started a different professional career. I was, 2 years out of school, also very new to the professional world. So even if your identity is changing within real estate, you still had that real estate identity from the start. I think a lot of people struggle with leaving a W-2 where they have a certain identity. They have their family, they have their job, and everything's very set, but they want more. There's this whole real estate Wild West world that it's hard to make that big of a change to get into. Do you see that a lot, people that want to get into real estate?
It's funny you say that because, yeah, I did everything. So I turned into a real estate agent and a real estate broker at the same time. So this whole time where I'm finding deals, rehabbing deals, managing property, I'm also selling property. And people would contact me, come into my office, and they were very motivated certain days saying, hey, I want to buy rental property. I was smart enough after several of these people come in and then just never hearing from them again. I would give them some homework to do after that first meeting that I would have with them, which I just basically threw everything back at them to make them really dig in and do some work, and then said, give me a call back in 2 weeks and we'll take it from there. 9.5 out of 10, I'd never hear from these people ever again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they want to be a real estate investor one day. 2 weeks later, they don't. Figure that out.
It's a tough industry because I think if you start working with us and you give us a full-time commitment and you're all in, you're going to be a millionaire within 5 years. I guarantee you. But you're probably not going to make any money the first 6 months too. So it's going to take a lot of risk, and it's going to take some uncomfort to get to that point where you want to be.
Well, I agree with you. And a lot is timing too. Different parts of the market cycle when people are getting in really does make a big difference. In the beginning with me, I was a little stubborn and I did everything on my own. I was reading a lot of books, so I did get a lot of education that way, newsletters, things like that. this day and age, there's so much more information at your fingertips, whether it be podcasts or just jumping online, mentorship groups, coaching. There's just so much available that people are able to compress their learning curve. So for me, and I agree with you, bottom line is real estate investing is the best investment vehicle you could possibly get for average people like me and you, for sure. So it took me about 10 years to get to that big goal, but it could be 5 years, it could be 15 years. It depends on what your journey is. But
What your
bottom
journey
line,
is, what your appetite for risk is, and how resourceful you are.
depends on if you want to go bigger, faster, right?
Exactly.
The discussion that we've had. So enough about me. To sum it up is I was an operations guy for a long time. I know operations. I can certainly consult on the operations game, but I am a deal finder, money raiser, buying large apartment complexes. That is my identity. I've made that shift from operations to just that. Let's talk about your journey, because it's much different than mine at the beginning. You're still in the infancy stage. In all reality, it's only been a couple years. But let's talk about you coming from college at the University of Tampa. I know that you learned a bit about real estate in that entrepreneurship program, but how you evolved into that first job because you needed a job till now.
Yeah, the first job was a job that paid the bills, but I'm really grateful for it because it taught me a lot. It taught me how to cold call people. It taught me how an organization works, and I think any entrepreneur can gain a lot from working for a couple of years like that. I learned about real estate, which made me interested in it in the program. I didn't really know anything until I met you. I'd say an identity shift was Adam Bales giving me Think and Grow Rich when I was 18, when I was a freshman in college. And that definitely stuck with me throughout school and impacted the way I thought about making money and being an adult and being a professional. That one impacted me a lot more than Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is what we usually hear of. And starting to work with you, I got obsessed with those podcasts, The Bigger Pockets, and those books as well. Mostly the podcasts. Listened to hundreds and hundreds of hours in that first year, and that's where I first heard about identity shifts. It was often explained by Brandon Turner that you needed to have those identity shifts to be an entrepreneur, to be an investor, and how important that was. And that education that's widely available definitely compressed that learning time as well as learning from you. Um, and it also changed from being a W-2 employee working for Hamel Real Estate to the day where you sat me down in the office and said, "So you want to be an entrepreneur?" And that right there had to be an identity shift. And it wasn't comfortable for a couple months because it took a little bit of creativity and figuring it out. But in hindsight, I'm really glad that that happened, and it helped push me to the identity of where I am now. And the whole identity focus, the identity shift, it's still something that I'm learning how to deal with. I've when I tried to do clothing for a little bit in college, I thought of imposter syndrome. I didn't think I was like the right person for that. I haven't had that as much in real estate, but it's still there sometimes when I'm walking one of my properties and I just feel maybe too young to be the person that's owning and operating this, and you're just trying to feel like you are that person. And something happened on Friday where we were having a conversation that also led to this podcast, where I went to my 24 unit and there's an elderly gentleman who's very sick. And I got reports that, his door is open, the TV's on, the lights are on, and he's not answering. People are concerned. So I show up to the property and here I am. I haven't shaven in a little while. I was wearing some more like street clothes, not professional clothes, and there's adults all around. And I'm 26, but I'm the guy that needs to go in here and go into this grown man's apartment and see if he's okay, and go into his bedroom and make sure everything's okay. And you have to step up and claim that identity sometimes.
No doubt. And that's a great story. I know we talked about on Friday where I was able to put myself in your shoes because I started at 21 and at 25, 26, yeah, I still was that young guy feeling a little bit out of place in certain situations. And I appreciated where you were with that uncertainty and reluctancy. And I was able to fast forward where I am in my journey now, or where I've been, I would say over the last 10 or 15 years, even though, I was that property manager, but very, very, very comfortable with that identity. So in that position, I would have been, oh, yep, here I am. I'm the guy. Let me take care of this. Where you're 26, you weren't quite there yet, but I believe you made your way in. You knew you had to take care of business.
Yeah, I'm always willing to step up to the plate and do what needs to be done. But you say you're a deal finder and money raiser. I like to be sort of more behind the scenes, just strategizing, planning, and really, again, strategizing the operation behind the scenes. I don't always want to be that guy knocking on the door and going into apartments. And the age thing is a big part of it. It's tough when I acquire a building and I go in to raise rents and I'm 26 and someone's lived there for 32 years. Oh, you moved into this building 6 years before I was born, and here I am telling you what you can and can't do. It's difficult.
Well, it's only
And
been a couple years.
I went back to the property on Saturday to check up on that gentleman, and there were politicians walking around, going door to door, campaigning, and they saw me walking down the path in the middle of the property, and one of them walked up to me. Hello, young sir. How are you today? Well, I'm good. How are
We
you?
want to
And
buy your vote.
they started talking to me, and they were asking me what I'm doing because they wanted to play that into how they could help me, as a citizen. And when I told them I'm a real estate investor, like, what does that mean? And I was like, well, I own this property. And he just looked at me for 5, 10 seconds and didn't know what to say because they don't expect that when they're meeting someone my age.
That's when you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You're not being normal. I know that
Yeah.
for sure. So getting back to you were in the logistics business as a W-2. I don't think, tell me if you agree, but I don't think that's what you wanted to do for your career. You contacted.
I hated logistics. I worked for a good company surrounded by great people, but I hated logistics.
Well, when you came to me, I know that you saw the ad I threw out on LinkedIn, so you were interested enough in real estate to reach out. And when you gave me your resume, I reached out to a lot of your customers and your manager. You got glowing references, which allowed us to get together. And the funny thing is, you started with me as an employee. You're an employee for the first, I think, 10 or 11 months, helping me grow.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to get into those thought platforms to, step out of my comfort zone and get to that next level. So you kind of drank from the fire hose, so to speak, from 30 years of my real estate journey. But you'll be able to tell people better than I can what was going through your head the first 6 months. What were you soaking in? What did that sound like and feel like for you?
I was really excited. It was a new opportunity. That was already a risk because I was building a customer base with the other job. So to start with something new, it was a risk, and I was excited. I wanted to learn and do as best of a job as I could. But I was a 24-year-old who also really wanted to make money. And you gave me the tools and knowledge to do that. You kind of laid it all out. When we would talk for an hour or two every day, that really taught me everything I needed to know to get started. So, as excited as I was to help you and build Hamel Real Estate and learn as much as I could, I was also just, wow, there is this roadmap here to a place I want to be. And like I hadn't seen this map before. Now it all is starting to kind of clear up in front of me.
It was my gravel roadmap. The Bill Hamel
Yeah.
over 30 years sounds very scary to me. based
No,
on
no money down real estate investing
there
is
we
the
go.
name of the game.
There we go. There we go. No, it was
But
it's a road to success. It's I just laugh at my 30-year journey. If you can't laugh, you got to cry.
But
But
again, the podcast, because I was obsessed with it. I would wake up, listen to a podcast on the way to work, work there from 9 to 5, and then listen to podcasts until bed. I was doing that instead of watching sports because I just wanted to keep absorbing all this information. And I think that's what it takes to really go into it full time.
well, in that first year, we had success. I made some good investments after I shifted away from property management and got into some bigger apartment complexes. And you were able to buy a home of your own, a 2-family, and then an 8-unit. I think that first year. And we also had a degree of success doing some direct to seller calls and trying to stir up some other business so we could make a little side money as well, because we all got to live. And then this is here's what you had mentioned, which I think brought you to a whole nother area leading to an identity shift. After about 10 months, we had to reset and then say, okay, where's this relationship going? And I said, I think we sat down one day because we were waiting for this discussion. It was to that time.
We both knew it was coming.
So you want to be an entrepreneur?
I was like, shit, yes. Yep. And I got to the point where I was starting to work on my own stuff in the middle of the day, and that wasn't fair to you. And I think part of the identity of being in real estate, like you mentioned before, is you have so many things going on. When you work a W-2, it's usually very clear, okay, you have to do this to the best of your ability, as many times as you can. When you're in this industry where you have the creativity, which we both love about the industry, you also have to figure out how you're going to spend that time, because there's 5 or 6 different things that you can do at once, and you have to prioritize and figure out which of these tasks are the most important.
So now you're a real estate entrepreneur, fair to say?
Yep.
Absolutely. So where are you based on now you're 10 months since that discussion? You've had some more success. You've made a nice investment, or I think getting into other, actually we did a deal together, so that's going fabulously. We're right on point, actually ahead of schedule where we need with that property that we purchased. What's your identity now?
That discussion feels like 2 years ago. As far as identity, it's definitely being a real estate investor and trying to learn how to outsource, being picky about deals. When I first started, I really wanted to just buy real estate because that's how you grow, right? You buy real estate, that's what you do. Now it's to the point where it's like, okay, I need to really be careful with these deals, have a much tighter buying criteria, and focus on, as Jake and Gino would say, the 100-year investor. Focus on that future. Never stop learning. Keep educating yourself, and be the best investor you can in whatever that takes. Figure that out.
Well, let me ask you. I'm gonna use myself. I can only speak for myself and where I am, and I know I'm 30 years in. You're 2 years in. I'm a deal finder, money raiser, property owner, investor. Is that what you want to identify as? Or I know right now on your 24 unit, you're into operations.
I have been. I definitely don't want to be. I want to be more on the behind the scenes, money raising, deal finding, and again, strategizing, planning out a company and how different employees can work together and grow an organization. I like that side of things. It's not just deal finding, it's more of growing a company and a strategy behind that.
So you're evolving naturally. You're once again, you're 26 years old and you've had some great growth and you're figuring it out. But I think based on what you just said, you have a vision of what you want to do, where you want to be. Let me ask you this. Based on that, is, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years? What's your specific identity?
It's so hard to answer those questions of where do you see yourself. I thought that was easier probably before the real estate stuff started because it's all moved so quickly. We had that conversation 10 months ago. There's been a number of deals that have closed since then. So if we keep at the same pace, it's really hard to know. I feel as if I have a much better vision of personal life than real estate. I think real estate will give me a vehicle to have a very healthy, active personal life, which is the real end goal.
Hmm.
What the real estate portfolio will look like, who knows? Deals will come, deals will go. Probably mostly investing in New York and Florida. I don't know what the unit count will be or any of those specifics, but I do know that real estate will put me in a place to have a healthy lifestyle.
And you're not going to be knee deep in operations.
No, definitely not.
Okay,
Definitely
let's
not.
create some value here for the audience. People who are listening to this, hopefully getting some value, saying, what am I doing in my W-2? Or what am I doing at this stage of my business career or
Hmm.
entrepreneur career or real estate career? And hopefully this discussion is getting them thinking of what they need to do to maybe make an identity shift.
I think the first step is to go to a local meetup. If you're in the Albany, New York area, we have ours the first Thursday of every month, Toro Cantina. You're going to meet people who do this every single day, and then you're going to meet other people who want to do it. And just being surrounded by those people is going to be your first step to get into the industry. You make those connections, you set up some coffee meetings. That's how you start, in my opinion. What do you think?
No, I agree. I agree. It's why reinvent the wheel? Success leaves clues. I could drop these platitudes all day, but yeah, especially at an early age and you're just trying to figure things out, start off with everything that's right at our fingertips, whether it be podcasts in any industry you're trying to get into. Of course, we're real estate guys, or go to that meetup, or once you maybe buy a deal, get a little bit of traction, think about a mentorship group so you can create some much better momentum, a mastermind. Those are so valuable. Just do some just like anything. When we are vetting a deal, do your due diligence. When you're hiring employees, vet that employee, do your due diligence. When we're screening tenants, do your due diligence so you can set yourself up for success. No different than getting into these mentorship groups or masterminds or any of that stuff. Do your due diligence, make sure you know what you're getting into so you're setting yourself up for success.
Absolutely. And you're going to have to stick with identity. You're going to have a different identity if you decide to do this weekends and evenings, part time, maybe buying one duplex a year, versus if you go all in and make it your livelihood and listen to 10 plus hours of podcasts a week. And I know that's a lot easier to say than do for most people, but it goes back to that identity. Are you a W 2 who invests in real estate on the side, or are you a real estate professional?
Well, based on the answer to that question, is really going to take you nowhere or where you want to go.
I think that's a good place to end it.
Awesome.